Guys, welcome back. Good to have you. If you're new, like, share, and subscribe. Get down there, hit that subscribe, hit the bell, hit all, you'll be notified the next time I do a video. Now, this time we're doing 9 serial killers that are still at large. Now they're talking about them being in the USA. These serial killers can be anywhere. All right? I've even seen them at large in Brazil. So with the USA, they can be right here in Canada. That guy in Brazil, the serial killer, who's saying he didn't jump in a plane and fly to Canada. Halloween's coming up, guys. So yeah. And with this video, all you'll see is bones. There's no blood. There's no decapitated bodies. There's no nothing like that. So you can sit your kids down and watch this video with them. All right? If they have any questions, answer them. Remember, stranger danger. Too many kids are being kidnapped and killed. Let's make our kids aware of this. All right? Let's go. At any time, it's believed that there are 25 to 50 active serial killers lurking in the dark corners of the USA and or Canada, stalking the streets and highways for their next potential victim. While the term serial killer usually conjures up images of people like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and Richard Ramirez, there are a whole host of serial killers who are perhaps even more terrifying for the sole reason they've never been caught. Here are 9 current serial killers who are still at large as of March 1st, 2022. One New York serial killer has been plying his grisly trade for over 20 years now, killing at least 10 victims between 1996 and 2010, and possibly more we haven't yet discovered. Dubbed the Long Island serial killer or the Craigslist ripper, the extent of these unsolved crimes is still unknown. It was only after authorities accidentally stumbled upon human remains while searching for missing sex worker Shannon Gilbert, and they realized Gilgo Beach might have been a dumping area for a serial killer. After initially uncovering 4 bodies, police widened their search and discovered another 6 bodies. 8 of them were women, all escorts, who used Craigslist to advertise their services. One body was that of a toddler, later discovered to be the daughter of one of the victims. Another body was that of a cross-dressing male, adding further mystery to the killer's motives. Several suspects were identified, but none of them had any conclusive ties to the 10 victims found. It's theorized that the killer possibly has a law enforcement background, judging by how he's managed to elude captures for so long. The mystery of the LISK, Long Island serial killer, lives on. Between 2005 and 2009, the bodies of 8 women between the ages of 17 and 30 years old were found dumped in the swamps of Jefferson Davis Parish near Jennings, Louisiana. Interestingly, the victims had several things in common. Several of them knew each other. One pair of victims even being cousins. Perhaps more bizarrely, it was all of the victims acted as police informants, several of whom actually reported on other Jeff Davis victims before their own murders. The investigation into the murders of the Jeff Davis 8 never identified a legitimate suspect, but it led to wild allegations of misconduct amongst the Louisiana police, muddling the case further. An investigative reporter later stated the people or person responsible for these killings were most likely part of law enforcement. Given each victim's history, this isn't too implausible. The fact that the predator or predators could be investigating their own crimes makes the Jeff Davis 8 a particularly disturbing case. Today, the case is known as a possible example of police corruption. In October 2019, interest of the case was renewed as a result of Showtime's new documentary on the case. In February 2009, a woman out for a walk with her dog discovered what she believed to be human bones on a mesa near Albuquerque, New Mexico. Police soon investigated, and to their shock, they subsequently discovered the remains of 11 women in the total along the same stretch of land. The women ranged between the ages of 15 and 32 years, and all were involved in the sex trade. Most were of Hispanic descent, and one of the women was pregnant at the time of her murder. While the case remains unsolved, police do have 2 major suspects. However, one of them is in prison in an unrelated charge. The other is dead. Lorenzo Montoya lived in a trailer a few miles from where the victims were found, but was killed in 2006 by a sex worker, and most likely his next victim, Joseph Bly, was a known rapist. Sorry about that, guys. In the area, when police invaded his home, they found a stash of women's jewelry and underwear. How creepy is that? I would say there's your suspect right there. They always take a trophy. It's not just in the USA or Canada where serial killers go uncaught. It happens all over the world. The Rainbow Maniac was a serial killer in Brazil who targeted gay men. Over the span of 18 months between 2007 and 2008, the Rainbow Maniac killed 13 people execution style with bullets to the head. all of whom were killed in Picturesque Park and then dumped in nearby bushes with their trousers around their ankles. One of his victims he beat to death, and his 12th victim was shot a grand total of 12 times. Sao Paulo has remained one of the most progressive cities in South America. However, at the time of the murders, several ultra-conservative groups were highly vocal of their intolerance towards homosexuality. It's possible that the person responsible for these killings was a vengeful homophobe looking to reduce the numbers of the gay community. In 2011, a suspect was arrested and tried in relation to the killings, but was found not guilty by the deciding jury. Sorry, guys. So, whoever the Rainbow Maniac might be is still out there, and it's possible he's got away with murder. While we're on the subject of overseas murder, here's some real nightmare fuel for you. In Nigeria, there's a place known as Ibadan Forest of Horror, or the Evil Forest. Back in 2014, a curious motorcyclist made his way into Soka Forest in Ibadan, Oyo State, Nigeria, and what he found was like something from a H.P. Lovecraft story. He found a small colonized area of decrepit buildings, and inside there were over 20 rotten corpses and severed human skulls. And most terrifyingly, 10 live people chained to slaughter benches. Other buildings had piles of clothes, boots, and passports inside them. Police have attempted to trace the owners of the passports, but have been unable to find them. Exactly who might be responsible for such horrors is still unconfirmed, but rumors state that the place may have been a den of religious zealots to indulge in ritual sacrifice and flesh eating. Nigeria is a very religious country, and such cannibalistic acts have deep primal associations. Since the discovery of the forest, many Nigerians with missing relatives have flocked to the area to search for their loved ones. 45 college-age males across a 20-year span, all drowned after getting intoxicated. However, the kicker is that these drownings happened in 11 different states. Despite the distance between them, some detectives think that drownings are actually the work of a serial killer or a group of serial killers that is dubbed the smiley face murder theory. Allegedly, detectives claim that smiley faces have been found near the sites where at least 12 of the men were drowned. It's believed that these men are abducted, murdered, and then disposed of in bodies of water to give the impression of accidental drownings. It's definitely a stretch to connect the murders, but they have a few things in common. Firstly, date rape drugs were found in the systems of the victims, enough to render them completely unconscious. The victim profile is very similar in every case: male, white, athletic, successful, and popular. Lastly, is the condition of the bodies. One victim had been missing for 40 days, but the deterioration of his corpse was nowhere near consistent of someone who had been missing, who had been in the water for 6 weeks. There was also the case of multiple other victims. Whether or not you think that the smiley face theory is fact or fiction, there's no doubt it's definitely a little creepy. This entry is quite unique, given that we know the serial killer's name. However, that's all we know. Pedro Lopez was born in Colombia in 1948. He was the son of a prostitute, and as a child was forced to watch his mother partake in extreme sexual acts. He himself was often molested, and Lopez claimed that these events significantly affected his psyche. By the early 1970s, Lopez began to rape and kill young girls across South America. When an attempted abduction went wrong in 1980, Lopez was apprehended by locals and handed over to police in Peru. Once in custody, Lopez spewed out his colorful life story, including being captured by a native tribe and sentenced to execution for killing a young girl. Then he said he'd killed about 3 girls a week for 2 years, raising his total number of victims to 300. Police were naturally skeptical of such a claim, but Lopez led police to the massive grave where they found the remains of 53 of his victims. The details then are a little hazy after this, with different sources reporting different stories. But what is confirmed is that Pedro Lopez was set free from prison in 1999, despite racking up one of the highest body counts known in history. He was sent to a mental home for 3 years and was then set free. In 2002, Lopez was suspected of being responsible for a new murder. However, no one has been able to find him since 1998. If you want to go all out weird, then this entry right here has you covered. Japan has a infatuation with vending machines, is widely acknowledged. There are 5 million vending machines across the country, making an average of one vending machine per 23 people. Between April and November 1985 in Hiroshima, 12 people were killed as a result of paraquat poisoning, and another 53 people were seriously injured. When authorities looked into the circumstances surrounding these poisonings, they found that most of the victims had one thing in common. They all recently consumed the drink Oranoman C. Around the same time, the companies behind Oranoman C had launched a marketing campaign offering free bottles of the drink from vending machines whenever someone made a purchase. In Japanese culture, sometimes people will place a drink on top of the machine for someone else to take if they didn't want it themselves. See, a lot of times in these Asian countries, somebody will buy a couple of drinks, and if they don't want the second one, they'll just put it on top of the machine for someone else that might need it who doesn't have the money, which helps out the economy. Police soon pieced things together and found that someone had been lacing these Oranoman C drinks with the poison and placing them back on top of the vending machine, which is quite possible. It was almost impossible for the police to track down the person responsible, since it was difficult to narrow down where a person had originally picked up the drink. Most of the vending machines responsible were in quiet back streets with no CCTV around. The person who carried out the poisonings was never found. The maniac with dull eyes, also known as the Danilowski maniac. The maniac with dull eyes was a Russian serial killer responsible for at least 7 murders between 2004 and 2007 over in Sherpovets, Vologda Oblast. Sorry, guys, that was a mouthful. Right there in Russia. Various bodies were found around the city, dumped in construction sites and in abandoned buildings. All of the victims were women between the ages of 17 and 31. And they had all been raped prior to their slaughter. Perhaps the most creepily, however, it is that with every scene that the killer left a calling card. Police found crude pornographic drawings on the walls near where every body was found. After establishing that the serial killer was likely responsible for these 7 murders, police also linked the maniac with a series of murders back in 1999, which was also suspected in the murder of a young woman in 2010. His total assumed victim count is 17. The maniac with dull eyes was never caught and probably still remains out there today somewhere. An ever elusive bunch. Serial killers are perhaps the most unsettling phenomenon of modern life. Well, there are many serial killers out hunting today. It's confronting to know that the serial killers featured in these serial killer documentaries aren't hiding out in your neighborhood. There you go, guys. All right. So, there's your 9 serial killers. Still at large. All right? They could be anywhere in the world. They could be just up the street from you, hiding in a dark place, waiting, watching. So, if your kids have questions, answer them. This Halloween, instead of doing drugs and alcohol, get out there in the street with them, go around to houses and get them a bunch of candy, let them have fun. Get them home, get them bath. Once they're in bed and asleep, yeah, okay. Crack a beer, roll up a joint, do whatever you want to do. Got to keep our kids safe. Remember that thing? It was even around when I was a little kid. Stranger danger. Just keep that going. Got to teach the kids, kick these people in the shin, punch them in their private spot. Just do whatever they got to do to get away. Run to a store, run to a neighbor somewhere, a house somewhere. Get the police called. Somebody else can be writing down the name of a car, the vehicle. Write down the license plate number. At least that. People nowadays have no idea what a license plate is because nobody ever gets the number down. Anyways, guys, Halloween's coming up. I want everybody to enjoy it. Stay safe. Happy Halloween. I'm gone.